If you're on the stream, thanks for joining us this morning. We're going to get started in a few minutes. Appreciate you guys tuning in with us today and every day, as always. Just as kind of a rule of thumb, if you are joining us at the moment, usually we go live a few minutes early just to give people a chance to jump on and hear us talk unnecessarily for 5 minutes. Again, if you're just tuning in, thanks for joining us today. We're going to get rolling in about, I'll give it 3 or 4 minutes. Again, if you're just tuning in, that was funny. It actually, I brought the live stream up on my phone, and it's picking up the Bluetooth, and it started playing. I thought I had it muted. But if you are on the stream, thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. If you're on the stream, once again, thanks for joining us. We're going to get started in about another minute or two. Again, we usually go live a couple minutes early and give people a chance to jump on, so we'll get rolling shortly. Give it about another minute and we'll get rolling. All right, let's get started. What's going on, everybody? It is Monday morning, shortly after 9 a.m. Central Time. This is the Going Broadway podcast. Thanks for joining us. I am Alex. Cole is here. T.O. is not here. And I don't know if that's going to be a more regular thing than not, but we'll see. Cole, what is going on?
Oh, the same old, same old. How are you?
Not too bad. Good weekend?
Oh, yeah. Great weekend.
Awesome. John Bowles, good morning. How we doing, buddy? Thanks for tuning in with us. Before we get into our recap, I wanted to mention that the XFL kicked off this past weekend. Actually, yeah, it was yesterday and Saturday. Our local St. Louis Battlehawks was the only away team that got the W over the weekend. So good job to them. And they actually beat the team that was picked to win the championship this year. So
and apparently we were picked to be like one of the worst. So
we were picked to be the worst, or at least in terms of
take that.
Yeah, at least in terms of odds to win the championship, we had the longest odds, or we're tied for the longest odds. So
is the championship a title belt?
I don't know, but that'd be pretty cool if it was. It actually should be, but if you're not aware, we mentioned that because obviously McMahon, or maybe not obvious to some, but Vince McMahon owns the XFL, so that's why we mentioned that. But City of St. Louis has been without pro football for better part of, how long has it been? 4 years, 5 years?
Four
something like that.
years.
So it's been a while since our local area has had professional football, so that's why I wanted to bring that up. And then our return to pro football, we got the win. So great job to the St. Louis Battlehawks of the XFL. So let's recap the last few events. I want to talk Smackdown a little bit. Talk about the New Beginning in Osaka event over the weekend, as well as the Free Enterprise event that Ring of Honor put on. Depending on time, we might again try to tackle our topic that we were going to talk about on Thursday, as far as the greatest wrestling stables of all time. We'll see how we're doing on time. We'll try to make the recap a little quicker than normal. William Lorenzana, hey buddy, how's it going? All right, let's just go in order. We'll go back to Friday night SmackDown. So they hype Goldberg's appearance and his return and this and that to start off the show. At least Michael Cole goes through the whole shtick about Goldberg's going to appear tonight. And then the first actual segment is the return of the Dirt Sheet segment with Miz and Morrison. I mean, it was, I mean, you can tell me if you disagree. I just thought it was just a normal, same old kind of segment that I feel like they're kind of overdoing these little mini talk shows or whatever you want to call them during Raw and SmackDown.
WWE likes to do those kind of things, which is, I mean, if that's what they want to do, that's what they want to do. I particularly liked the Miz and John Morrison's little promo video, though, like their little movie shoot promo video that they did. I thought it was funny. You know, they had John Laurinaitis in there.
Lance Storm was in it.
Storm. You know, I thought it was creative. It was a little bit different than what WWE's done here recently. So I mean, especially for tag team wrestling at that, like I was very like happy to see like an actually decent cut promo.
I think it was a good promo. I just besides the little comedy video at the beginning, I was just kind of like, I mean, I think I'm spoiled in this day and age because I'm wanting some kind of a, not swerve necessarily, but something intriguing or interesting to happen at any given point in a wrestling segment, regardless of the company. And that's kind of why I'm spoiled in the way that whenever there is a standard segment that really fulfills its purpose, I'm just kind of like, okay. Especially when they overdo it, but it was what it was. Like you said, the little comedy video at the beginning was, it was funny. Like you said, it had Laurinaitis in it. Didn't it have Miz's dad in it?
Yeah, Mr. Miz.
But they're essentially building to their tag match at Super Showdown.
I feel like they're kind of teasing a fatal 4-way tag match at WrestleMania too.
And they Usos got involved.
Bobby Roode and Dolph
Ziggler. Ziggler got involved. So yeah, we'll see where that goes. But then that set up the Usos and Ziggler and Roode match. I actually did not watch this match itself. I know the Usos got the win. Was the match any good? Was it just kind of a...
I mean, you got 4 really talented wrestlers in the ring with those 2 tag teams. And so I thought it was a really, for the slot on the card that it got, I thought it was a decent match. I thought it was they only got this much time to put something on.
Right.
It's a tag match, so everyone's kind of got to get their time in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's just a tease of what we're going to see more of here the next month or two.
I just hope they give, and like you said, all 4 guys are talented, but I'm especially a fan of Ziggler and Rude, whether it's together or separately. I sent a video to Cole and another buddy of ours over the weekend. Actually, it was just yesterday, but it's super hilarious video of Gargano and Ciampa basically not serenading, but they basically start playing Bobby Roode's Glorious theme, and every time they just get Bobby Roode's reaction, and each time Bobby Roode's just like, and it's just, not to get off tangent, it's just a very funny video. And
granted, this is like during when they were all in NXT.
Oh yeah, this has been,
it dates back a little.
Yeah,
but
this has been a couple years ago.
It speaks to to his character too, though. You know, like what they've kind of missed out on.
Exactly. That's the route I was gonna go. It shows that he's more than just almost a semi-stale character that he is currently. So again, I hope they go in the right direction with Ziggler and Rude, whether it's together, separate, maybe they split them up before WrestleMania and you can give those guys a match. Who knows? That's kind of my fantasy, 5 seconds of fantasy booking there. So then from there, I feel like I'm leaving something out, but they have the Elias Cesaro match.
King Corbin came.
There was that segment, okay. So I'm just looking at it right now. So
that's when he invaded the
the production truck. That's right. Okay. So he's basically in the production truck. Adam Pearce of previous Ring of Honor and NWA fame gets a cameo. But aside from that, it was just a quick segment. Then we have the Elias Cesaro match. I guess I don't want to spend too much time on little segments like that, just because there's not really much to talk about. It was what it was. Elias Cesaro match. Elias gets the win. This match I did watch. I just found myself wishing I'd watched the tag match instead.
Well, it's disappointing because I like both of those wrestlers, and I wish they got bigger pushes, but the match means nothing.
Exactly. What's it building towards?
It's not even really a storyline. It's more just like, we don't have anything to do with these two people, so let's just throw them here.
You guys don't have a match on SmackDown? Well, now you do. There's no storyline, but who cares? That's kind of how it felt. And it goes back to what we were talking about last week in terms of, I mean, you can throw Elias into this too, but Cesaro, Sami Zayn, Nakamura, they're just not using them like they should be. And at the same time, it's hard to really use guys that have so much, when you have so much wrestlers on your roster that have so much talent. I mean, inevitably, you're going to have guys that you can't necessarily push in large storylines. I hate these lights. But at the same time,
I'm curious to see, are they going to put those two in a tag, like make them more of a tag team? You think like Cesaro and Nakamura are headed towards at the tag division, or you think they're freeing the belt off of him because they're going to need all those guys they can get for the Andre the Battle Royale kind of match? I mean, what's the purpose behind taking? They were announcing him as the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion, and how he's had this huge run as champion, but we don't even really realize it because he's been so stale. So it's like, what's the purpose of taking the belt off him the way they did, and then now still trying to book him with Zayn and Cesaro as like they're a legitimate tag team?
I don't know. It's hard to tell what they're gonna do with them. I was gonna say how they're going to push them, but that's my optimistic thinking. I doubt that they get pushed in any sort of way. I think at least in the immediate term, they're just gonna do what they've been doing with them, putting them in these comedy segments that aren't. I mean, some of them are funny, I guess, but at the same time, it kind of it negates the fact that they actually have in-ring talent. All three of them do. I'd be interested to see between Zayn, because I know Elias has just recently re-signed. Nakamura, I fairly recently is re-signed within the last couple years. I'd be interested to see where Zayn and Cesaro are on their contracts, because I wouldn't be surprised if at least Cesaro considers, if his contract is up anytime soon within the next year or two, if he considers leaving.
Yeah, for sure. Here's Sami Zayn. He's not even wrestling right now because WWE won't clear him. You know, and we're kind of back to the Daniel Bryan saga where you know, you won't clear me. Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna go get cleared by other doctors, and then if I'm gonna threaten you, and if you don't clear me and let me get back to wrestling and doing what I love, I'm just gonna go across the street and work. Which is now why it's great to have something like AEW to make WWE have to make those decisions.
Right.
Of I'm gonna shelf you but make money off of you still. Okay, well, cool. I'm gonna go make my money over here where I'm not getting shelved.
And have you found it interesting that the only people that have retired but then not only came back but have been medically cleared to come back have been guys that have gone that route to say, okay, I want to come back, and you know, maybe in the case of Daniel Bryan, for sure, Edge maybe as well. You know, if I'm them, I'm telling WWE, but I'm also telling AEW and all the other competitors, I've been medically cleared by my own doctors. So if I'm Edge and I'm Daniel Bryan, like you said, I'm telling WWE, hey, I've gotten cleared by my own doctors. So either WWE doctors can also clear me, or I'm going to consider my options and, you know, jump elsewhere. Because Edge was in talks with AEW as well. I don't know if you saw that.
Right.
Whether that was just, you know, leverage, I don't know. But I know.
Well, I think it goes back to loyalty, though. I think it's great that guys like Daniel Bryan and Edge went back to WWE and say, hey, look, before I just go and sign to AEW, because I could easily just go sign to AEW, ROH, Impact. I go sign somewhere right now.
Right.
And I didn't have to say a word to you.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, I'd rather come back to the company that has been good to me, that took care of me when I was down with a neck injury and all these things. And I want to give you the opportunity to make it right. Clear me, let me wrestle, or don't, and I'm out. You know, and so that's kind of where I'm at with Sami Zayn. Is I just don't know I don't know where he's at. Does he want to wrestle, or is he cool with being just a mouthpiece and getting paid, you know, a ton of money to be somebody's mouthpiece? I mean, some people do need a really good Paul Heyman. You know, I mean, is he that kind of manager that can get anybody over? So far, I like what he's doing. He's got the right talents. That now it's the storylines that he's got to be given to make. You know, Paul Heyman kind of lucks into getting Brock Lesnar in every prominent storyline. So, you know, now they got to give him opportunities to get people over within those storylines. So,
yeah. So I was just looking real quick about as far as Sami Zayn's contract. So he actually signed a 3-year deal with WWE shortly before the surgery he had surgery would have been in 2018, I think.
Late 2018.
So if it was just before then, his contract is actually up late next year. So basically WWE has a year and a half, roughly, a little more, depending on, you know, exactly when the contract was signed, to make Sami Zayn happy, essentially, whether that means him doing what he's doing. Maybe he is happy doing what he's doing. I don't know. It seems like he's having fun when he's, you know, doing the promos and things like that. It's just because go ahead.
It's definitely a case of he's doing his job, at least. I'll give him that.
For sure.
Whether he's happy or not, he's obviously taking what he's been given and rolling with it, which is great to see. But I would love to hear like his out of kayfabe thoughts on his position right now.
Exactly. Tim Purnell, hey buddy, how's it going? He asks, how do you feel about the XFL? We actually touched on that a little bit before we got into our recap. I thought the overall product Saturday and yesterday, I found it to be surprisingly good. I mentioned our St. Louis Battlehawks was the only away team that got a win over the weekend. But besides that, again, I thought the overall product between the 4 games was surprisingly good. And I won't go into a whole bunch of details, but I was pleasantly surprised. I mentioned that it's been a couple years, closer to 4 years since St. Louis has had a pro football team. It's something we've been hoping to get back, regardless of the fact that it's the NFL. I almost think that St. Louis fans would rather have the XFL than the NFL, because I'm sure there's still bitterness towards the NFL front office and Roger Goodell and all that stuff. But anyway, I thought it was good, so hopefully it stays good. The rule changes compared to the NFL are interesting. I like that there's all kind of different scoring scenarios, so we'll see. So going back to SmackDown.
Who's next?
I don't think we're there yet.
There's a little segment. It was announced that it was going to be that segment, and then they did the whole Baron Corbin.
Oh, yeah, we can skip Baron Corbin. I don't really care.
we can always skip Baron Corbin when it comes to you.
Yeah. Well,
he's like, I just wish I could erase every segment he's ever done.
Yeah. True. It's a true statement. Yeah. Tim Purnell says Guardians for me. Guardians. Is that the
he's talking about? He's in Oklahoma. I'm pretty sure that's got to be Oklahoma's team or close to Oklahoma, because he lives in Oklahoma.
For some reason I thought DC's Defenders. Guardians is New York.
He's in New York. He's originally from New York. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I do like the fact that there are people in other markets that like the XFL, and that they're not just going the route of, well, I'm staying loyal to the NFL. I'm not going to watch the XFL. People like football. I mean, that's just how it is. So,
Will says Corbin's a waste of airtime. Brian, we're getting ready to talk about Goldberg and Bray Wyatt.
Yep. So, the Goldberg promo, so inevitably he challenges The Fiend. I won't go into a whole bunch of details, but did this surprise you? Because it did me. I didn't see Goldberg coming back for a match with The Fiend. I thought it was just going to be a Lesnar versus not Dolph Ziggler specifically, but like a Dolph Ziggler type, like someone that's talented in the ring, but is, I don't know. This kind of came out of left field, and it's one of those few times that WWE has surprised me, but I didn't really care for the surprise. I didn't care for the payoff, like, because the thought of a Goldberg Fiend match, I don't know, and maybe it's just because I'm over Goldberg, because he's obviously up there in age. He's had his time.
I don't. So here's the thing. One, he let the cat out of the bag really early in the promo. Like it was like, as soon as he got on air, he was like, "Yeah, I've wrestled Lesnar. Now I want the Fiend." Like, it was like, there was no build at all.
Exactly.
So that bugged me, because right off the back I knew exactly who he was going to challenge. So it didn't really shock me like I wanted it to. Like, I felt like if he would have built it in a way that would have kept me on my toes, and then just was like, so I'm going to challenge the Fiend. Or had he acted like he wasn't going to challenge the Fiend at all, and then the Fiend interrupted him, and then he challenged the Fiend.
Something like that.
Something like that would have helped me been like, okay, yes. Now, the problem I have with this match is I know for a fact the Fiend's going to win. There's no way, I'm telling you, there is not a chance. Shout out Vince McMahon. No chance that Goldberg is going to win that match. Now, what I do see happening is a lot of teases of Goldberg winning that match. I see Goldberg hitting several spears and several jackknives and jackhammers and every other little thing that he can do. I see him just running through, like, what Goldberg would do, running through the Fiend, and then the Fiend no-selling him. You know what I mean? I see the Fiend jumping up from them, getting up, and doing what the Fiend does, and eventually putting Goldberg down, which will ultimately sell him even more, because they like to sell Goldberg as a Brock Lesnar, where he's just this undefeated Undertaker. Like, they just sell him as this, there's no way he's going to lose kind of person too. But it's clear to me that Bray Wyatt's holding the belt all the way to WrestleMania, And if they put the belt on Goldberg at Super Showdown, you are going to have people lose their freaking minds.
You have buried any incarnation of The Fiend, Bray Wyatt, whatever. I mean, if you have Goldberg win the title, I don't care if you try to keep him as The Fiend, he's done.
Not against The Fiend. You can have Goldberg. Wait, do that with Roman Reigns, or do it when you're ready to ruin somebody else or ruin their title run. Do it with someone. The Fiend is not the guy to have Goldberg beat. At least not clean.
Not at all.
You know, if he was to win somehow where he doesn't get the belt, like, cool. But for me, like, it didn't shock me, but I don't like the booking because it doesn't help Goldberg. Whether or not Goldberg's looking to get help, I don't think he needs it. He'll come back in a year again or the next Saudi show and be right back on the card fighting somebody. But I don't think so. Like, my thing is, I don't think a Dolph Ziggler Goldberg match was like what I really wanted to see.
Well, no, and I didn't mean Ziggler specifically.
But I'm saying, that's what I'm saying, like having one of those like one-off matches where he fights like Robert Roode, or, you know, like where he just fights a decent, even Cesaro, like where he just fights a decent mid-carder. Like, not my thing. I would rather see him fight like somebody who's stuck in between limbo right now. You know, if it was AJ Styles or, you know, whatever the case may be. But when they put him on SmackDown to announce it, I knew it was going to be a SmackDown star, and I was like, who's not in a promo right now? You know, who's not in a story?
My only thought was they were going to set up like kind of like you said, someone that's not in a I don't want to say not in a storyline, but someone that's not in a deep storyline, I guess, because I didn't feel like the whole Fiend Daniel Bryan thing wasn't resolved. So before the promo, I got to thinking, who on that roster makes sense? And I couldn't really come up with an answer. So I thought
Corbin at first. I was thinking, for me, it was going to be Corbin, Roman Reigns, or Daniel Bryan. And the reason why is all three of them, they need an out of the storylines that they're in right now.
Yeah. Daniel Bryan was the one that at best made the most sense, even though the Fiend and Daniel Bryan still had their what I felt like was an unresolved feud. But I feel like you could have put that on hold and had a Goldberg Daniel Bryan match. That just seems to make more sense than Goldberg and the Fiend. Just real quick, a couple of comments. Brian Mendez says he should win. Let us know who he is. I don't know if you're talking about the Fiend or Goldberg. He also says, I wanted Roman and Goldberg. I don't know.
That's a dream match, honestly. Like spear versus spear. You know, like who's got it.
The only reason I don't want to see that is because I think it's more or less I've still never been on board with Roman Reigns. I mean, I just view him as somebody that is, you know, semi-talented in the ring. And this goes back to, I feel like I'm spoiled in the sense that I'm used to these guys that can put on 5-star matches, that have had a history of doing so, that are good in the ring, that are seasoned. I'm talking, and at least I'm talking about just the WWE roster. I'm talking about guys like, you know, AJ Styles. He's always been good in the ring, regardless of the company he's been with. Daniel Bryan. Dolph Ziggler puts on good matches. I mean, I don't know if he's ever had a 5-star match, at least by, you know, Dave Meltzer standards, but whatever. Brian Mendez says Bray should win. Yeah, 100% agree. He also says Roman, a great worker. I don't know if I agree. I think he's semi-good in the ring. I think he's good at the business aspect in the ring in terms of, you know, selling when it's needed, and the in-ring psychology part I think he's good at, but at least in terms of in-ring performance, I don't know if I agree with that.
I'm all about the Roman Empire. I love Roman Reigns. But I feel like he got the John Cena effect. I feel like they've just tried to over-push him.
And maybe that's part of it.
To the point that, like, people are already sick of him, instead of, like, with Seth Rollins, they found a way to reincarnate him, put him in the mid-card. Like, he's found a way to thrive where he's at, where Roman, if he's not in the title picture, it doesn't make sense. But when he's in the title picture, people automatically get mad. And that's a good indication that he's been overbooked or overpushed.
You know what I would have loved if somehow they would have obviously had to change rosters or whatever, again, this is just 5 seconds of my fantasy booking. Imagine if you would have put Roman Reigns in place of Seth Rollins with that stable. So if you had Reigns and AOP and Murphy, do you think they maybe would have gone to the point of, so they're just a straight up heel faction at the moment. Like, no one likes him. Do you think if they turned Roman heel, that fans would have been like, oh, okay, this is something new, this is something different. You know, I'm actually going to cheer this. Do you think they would act? Do you think fans would have actually bought into this stable as like a cool heel faction that would get cheered because at least with a Roman heel turn, it would be something new.
So I think they love the Seth Rollins leading of that faction because they wanted it to be like this heel faction.
Oh, for sure.
And
for
Seth
sure.
Rollins gets that over. I think they're scared, like super scared to turn Roman heel. Just like that's why I'm saying he gets the John Cena booking. Because they were so scared later in John Cena's career to turn him, because they were scared we may never be able to turn this guy back to face. Once we make him, once he goes heel, he's heel. And I think that's a testament to somebody who can do that, like Edge. Edge can go heel to Randy Orton. There are just certain guys who can go heel to face like it's no big deal. And I don't know if Roman can do that.
Brian Mendez agrees with you, by the way. He says it's too late for Roman to turn heel already. Yeah, I mean,
I mean, if you're going to do it, you need to make sure that you have longevity of him being a heel, that this isn't just a 3 to 6 month storyline, but you're talking a few years of him being heel. Yeah. I mean, the Miz spent, almost over half his career being a heel and then went face for a year, and there was longevity in his heel run. And so WWE right now likes to try to just flip guys back and forth depending on the storyline,
a la Big Show.
But he's not really the only one. I mean, AJ Styles has flipped like 3 times in the past 2 years. Like, it's nonstop flipping. And Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, like Sami Zayn, like how many times are we gonna flip somebody to make it fit the storyline? Let's start fitting the storyline to fit the guys that you've set up.
Agreed.
On your roster. So I would love a Roman Goldberg match, especially at Super Showdown where it means nothing. It doesn't matter who wins. It'd be a great time for Roman to take a L and it not really hurt him.
Yeah. I don't know if you really. I don't know. To me, I get that you put over Goldberg at, what was it, SummerSlam when he beat Ziggler? Was that SummerSlam, I think?
Yeah, but that's because Ziggler was talking all that mess, too, and it's just funny.
No,
it was a good comedy segment almost, to see him get destroyed.
I don't know at this point, especially, I mean, it'd have to be the right wrestler if you're going to put over Goldberg. You're so close to WrestleMania. You're obviously not going to put him with a lower card guy. You almost have to do one of two things. If you're going to put Goldberg over, he's just going to have to go up against a mid-card guy. No one really
set up a storyline for Mania.
And if you're going to go that route, if you're going to set up something for Mania, I think the only way that you have Goldberg get a win of some kind, and if it's over a upper card guy, is if it's like in a tag match where Goldberg actually gets the pin on somebody. Like, I'm just throwing out an example, but let's just say Goldberg and 2 other guys have a 6-man tag match with AJ Styles and OC. The only way, and again, this is just 5 seconds of fantasy booking. The only way it makes sense to me if you're going to put Goldberg over a upper card guy is if it's in some kind of a tag match. There's some kind of schmoz, and Goldberg catches AJ, like if AJ's like distracted, turns around to a spear and gets jackhammered, and then he gets the win. Something like that. That would make sense. But in a one-on-one match, especially when you're so close to WrestleMania, I don't think you put Goldberg over clean over an upper card guy in a singles match.
I definitely think this booking is to build the Fiend more. The Fiend's already attacked a lot of legends. Like I said, it doesn't really hurt Goldberg. He's not really active anyways right now. So I mean, it's just a bad booking in my opinion, because it's not even believable that he's gonna win, because that he's not.
Yeah. We're gonna speed this up a little bit. It's 35 minutes in, and we're still midway through SmackDown. So, Daniel Bryan and Heath Slater. Daniel Bryan obviously gets the win, but then he kind of, during the match, he is rather, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Is he teetering back to heel?
I don't know. It's kind of difficult to pinpoint what they're doing. It's like I don't know.
First off, shout out to Heath Slater. To put on a funny promo when you barely get any TV time. I mean, it was a good promo. I enjoyed his little segment with Daniel Bryan before the match. But I can't decide if this was because he came down the ring with the yes movement and did the whole yes thing still. Like there were those signs that he still faced, and like afterwards he did face things. So I don't know if that was just a way to kind of clear cut him from the Fiend.
It's just really hard to put my finger on what they're doing with Daniel Bryan at this point, because he's doing his yes chants, but just kind of and this could be like WWE dropping subtle hints. It might be nothing. It could be, those little like the Easter eggs you find in shows or whatever, but they keep calling his submission the LaBelle lock. They're not calling it the yes lock. Just little things like that. I don't know.
And I don't know if that's just based off the commentator who's with him, because
could be
different commentators have been there during different parts of his career.
It could be. It could just be me overanalyzing and overthinking.
I feel like they're getting ready to put him in a program with Bray, or not with Bray, with Strowman.
Could be.
I think WrestleMania you might see him versus Strowman for the IC.
Could be. Speaking of Strowman, they recap how Strowman won the title from Nakamura the week before. Strowman has an interview with Renee Young. They had a thing where like the Revival came out, attack him from behind. Nakamura joins them.
Yeah, you use the Revival while you can. Like that's where we used the Revival. Like that was the segment we put him on TV for. Hey, let's chop block his knees.
Well, I mean, props to WWE Creative. I mean, they're still using them, period, and they're using them in, I'd consider it a high-profile spot. I mean, anytime you're using talent in a segment that is a current champion, I mean, it's better than the ho-hum Baron Corbin segments, in my opinion.
Speaking of someone else they don't use, Apollo Crews
and Sheamus. Go figure.
Late in the card too. That's a very late in the card match to do a squash match.
Yeah.
Especially why don't we build superstars with wrestlers who aren't on TV?
I don't know.
It just doesn't even make sense.
It's funny. This is my response to anything we talk about WWE. When you ask me a question, I'm just like.
The thing that bugs me is I love Sheamus and Cesaro as a tag team.
I did too.
And you have Cesaro doing nothing right now. Your tag team division has a chance to actually be good right now on SmackDown. If you look at the teams that are there, Rude and Ziggler, the Usos, New Day, you have Miz and Morrison right now, Heavy Machinery. And then you could throw Sheamus and Cesaro in there and put the bar back on the spot, especially with tag teams reuniting.
And imagine if the Revival were actually if they were actually staying.
Oh my! Let's stop playing around and let's put these guys back together.
Yeah,
because they were a good heel faction.
Agreed. They pretty much don't do anything with Sheamus except they do the whole segment with him and
he's going to win the
G.
Andre the Battle Royal. I'm telling you right now, like that, his build is literally to win the Andre the Battle Royal at WrestleMania, and then
we'll see. And then they do the number one contenders match for the women's title. I don't know why you have Carmella win this. If you're seriously going to have it, this had better just be for like Super Showdown.
It is,
or just like a. Did they say that?
Here's the thing, I wish Carmella got a bigger push, because I think she's better than what she's given credit for, especially on the mic. So right now on SmackDown, you just don't have a lot of good mic people, and I think she's one of the very few women who can cut. She can cut a way better promo than Bayley.
Oh, 100%.
So I love it because she's talented enough in the ring to get over with talented women's wrestlers, but she's better on the mic than most of them.
Right.
And so I love the booking. I think for Super Showdown, it's going to be a match that obviously I feel Bailey is going to win. If Carmella wins, great. Like I'm going to be pulling for Carmella. Like I would love to see just a huge 180 thrown at us and see Carmella take it to WrestleMania and then lose it to whoever they're going to bring back to face her at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But I loved the booking. I was shocked it wasn't Naomi, but maybe they're setting that up for Chamber or for Mania. Who knows? I don't know.
We'll see. While we're on the WWE topic, by the way, that concluded SmackDown. So just a couple things about WWE or WWE related. So Samoa Joe actually returned to action at last night's house show. That's kind of notable. So I would expect to see him back on Raw sometime soon.
Apparently he was in trouble. Apparently the injury was just a thing.
The injury was a legit thing, and the suspension was not. The suspension was a rumor that inevitably, at least the last I read, was found to not be true.
Because I also read the same thing with Andrade. I read that he's actually the reason why he got suspended was because he didn't show up because he was out of the country. Same with Primo.
Yep.
a while back that he got suspended just because he was a no-show because he was out of the country.
Yep. So the story came out, and basically to go into a little bit more detail, not to spend a whole lot of time on it. So Hugo Savinovich, who used to be one of WWE's Spanish announcers, he was actually the first guy to break the story about the issues with the last Saudi trip that they had. So anytime he comes out and says something that is rather, I'll call it controversial when it comes to WWE, people listen. So he said that whenever Primo got suspended, it was because he basically, was on vacation or out of the country or whatever, and WWE essentially suspended him whenever he wouldn't come back to the States to do testing for however they do their wellness testing. And Hugo Savinovich essentially said it was the same thing with Andrade, maybe different kind of circumstances, but basically what I read, he was out of the country. He volunteered to, hey, if you want to send me whatever you need to send, I'll do the test in front of a doctor, whoever you say, whatever. I'm out of the country right now. And according to Hugo Savinovich, Primo and I believe Andrade both essentially found out that they were suspended whenever WWE announced it.
Right, because they consider a no-show meaning that you as a fail.
Right.
And I get that mentality, but especially if they don't have a pass, because a lot of these are just random ones that they have to do legally.
Mm-hmm.
So my thing is, from my knowledge, Andrade's never had any wellness violations or anything that we know of.
If this is true, no. I totally agree.
And so my opinion on it is, you guys got to change that rule. If it's a random drug test and they're out of the country and it's not during a time that they're required to be at your facility or at your show, set it up. Just reschedule it.
Yep.
Most of the things that they're going to get tested for would have to be out of their system anyways, a week, a couple days, whatever. Tell them, hey, give them a little bit of notice to give them you can't give them 24-hour notice and be like, hey, get here.
Exactly.
In this state, at this time, at this place. That's just ridiculous.
Yep, exactly. The other thing I was going to mention that is WWE related, so they announced this morning the location of next year's WrestleMania 37, 2021. It will be in Inglewood, California, so Hollywood essentially, at SoFi Stadium. That is... What team plays there, or what will be playing there? Because
Chargers?
Because I know they're still building it. Hang on, I gotta look.
For sure, the Chargers are the one that moved there, right?
Because I know they're going to have a Super Bowl there.
Or the Raiders. Was it the Raiders?
Hang on. If you're on the stream and you can help us out, I'm looking right now.
Raiders or Chargers? It's one of the LA teams.
Because I thought it was the Rams.
I think they're staying Los Angeles.
Okay.
Raiders or Chargers? They were all put in a bid to move. So
okay. So it looks like the Chargers. So Rams and Chargers are sharing it. Rams and Chargers moving to the stadium projected for August of 2020. So I guess they're sharing it. Either way. So WrestleMania will be there next year. WrestleMania 37, March 28th, 2021. This says it can hold up to, so the capacity is 70,240, but it is expandable to over 100,000 for Super Bowls, WrestleMania events, FIFA World Cups, Summer Olympics, and other major events. So they're gonna announce it over 100,000. I mean, it's a given. Whether they actually have 100,000 or not, that's what they're pushing for, obviously. So,
if you'd like to sponsor my trip to WrestleMania, you can do so at www.colewantsyourmoney.com.
I don't think that's a legitimate website.
It's not.
We could make it one, though.
Very true.
Okay. So I'm going to touch on a couple of other events that happened over the weekend. So we had the New Japan New Beginning in Osaka event. It would have been late Saturday, early Sunday morning, our time, depending on where you're at. I just wanted to touch on a couple of matches. I watched most of the card, but if you've never watched, so first off, if you've never watched a New Japan event, I would highly encourage you to, especially if you've only ever watched WWE. If you've only ever watched WWE, I highly encourage you to get out of your WWE bubble. There's so much more in terms of professional wrestling that's out there right now. We've touched on AEW, we've touched on New Japan before, Ring of Honor, NWA. I mean, even the indie circuit. I mean, these guys that are on the rise right now, they came from the indies. So that being said, so the card itself was a pretty standard card for New Japan. Most of the matches were pretty good, so I'm just going to touch on a couple of them. So they had a tag match with Kazuchika Okada and Will Ospreay against Taichi and Zack Sabre Jr. They're essentially setting up a feud with Ospreay and Zack Sabre Jr. for Zack Sabre's Rev Pro British Heavyweight title. Again, it was a pretty good match. It was predictable, but there are a couple of cool spots in it. Okada and Ospreay get the win. Again, they're pretty much just building towards the Ospreay Zack Sabre Jr. match. The other couple matches, so there's Hiromu Takahashi and Ryu Lee, who's Dragon Lee in the U.S. He's actually the current Ring of Honor television champion, but this match is for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title. I've almost come to the conclusion that any match that's for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title is going to be a fantastic match. Like I was watching part of this match with my wife, and by this point it had already been on, so I was able to rewind and show her a couple of spots like after they happened. It's like, watch this, and almost every reaction out of her whenever she saw these spots was like a gasp or like oh dear God or something like that. But if you're evoking an emotion, so if you're a wrestling product and you're evoking an emotion like that from my wife who hates professional wrestling, you're doing something right. So mad props to New Japan for that, and this was a great match. Hiromu Takahashi, so good in the ring. Dragon Lee or Ryu Lee, so good in the ring. So during the first 5 minutes of the match, they legit had a chop fest with each other. I mean, just chops back and forth, off and on for the first 5 minutes of the match. You could legit see. I mean, whenever you have announcers say, "Oh, there's welts building up or bruising or whatever," you could legit see their chests turning dark purple and black in spots. I mean, it was literally open hand chops. Each guy probably took 50 or 60 of them. I am not exaggerating that number whatsoever. If you have a chance, go back and watch this match. You have a chance, go back and watch the entire card. Takahashi retains. Then they have the Jon Moxley Minoru Suzuki match for the IWGP US Heavyweight title. I was kind of disappointed with this match. It was rather short. It was just a lot of standard brawling, for lack of a better way of putting it. Moxley gets the win, retains the title. But what I found intriguing is they have Zack Sabre Jr. attack Moxley after the match. And I think they're going to set up a Zack Sabre Jr. Moxley match for the United States title. Which begs the question, does Zack Sabre Jr. lose the British heavyweight title to Will Ospreay if he's going to go after the United States title? I think so. We'll see. Again, I'm not spending a whole lot of time on this because I know a lot of people don't watch New Japan, which that's fine. But if you've never watched a New Japan event, highly encourage you to do so. And there are English commentators. It's not like you're just listening to someone speak Japanese the entire time. Actually, Kevin Kelly, who used to be a WWE commentator and interviewer, he's one of their commentators. He's actually quite good, in my opinion. So then the last match, Tetsuya Naito against Kenta for the IWGP Heavyweight and Intercontinental titles. A couple things I wanted to say about this. Number one, this goes to show that WWE poorly misused and mishandled Kenta when he was there. So he was, for those of you that don't know, he was Hideo Itami. And I'll put it in perspective like this. Within a year's time, Kenta goes from being Hideo Itami in WWE or NXT or 205 Live or whatever, and being a low to mid card guy at best, super talented by the way, to main eventing a New Japan event for the heavyweight and intercontinental titles. And even the announcers were touching on that, the fact that, their storyline right now is Kenta's not a main guy, like he's not a main event guy, and the fact that so the venue it was at Osaka Hall, and the storyline was that they started selling out tickets whenever they booked this match. So they're trying to build off the fact that Kenta is a main guy or main event guy, and he honestly, in my opinion, he is. I think he's great at evoking a crowd reaction whenever he's doing interviews. I think he's great in the ring. I don't know why WWE dropped the ball on him, but point is they did. So inevitably, Naito gets the win, but there was a spot at the end that if you go back and watch, I can't tell if Naito was busted open the hard way or if he just bladed maybe too deep, but there's a spot where he gets trying to think of the spot. Basically, his head goes into an unexposed turnbuckle, and then he comes out of it bleeding, but bleeding heavily. And it looked like he was busted open the hard way because it looked like he had a huge gash on his head. But I couldn't tell because Naito has longer hair. I couldn't tell if it was a gash or if it was just his hair. Either way, it was a neat looking spot. So Brian Mendez says Kenta looks great too, looks healthy. I 100% agree. It's not like Kenta has any kind of injuries at the moment, so it's interesting to see what they're going to do with Kenta. I mean, they have him in Bullet Club, so they obviously think enough of him to put him in a main event spot. They obviously think enough of him to put him in a main event type stable. So that was the New Japan card, at least the highlights of it. Wanted to go through the Ring of Honor card real quick from last night, or actually yesterday afternoon. That was the Free Enterprise event that was in Baltimore. Just a quick rundown. So you had Mark Haskins against Alex Shelley. This is one thing that surprised me, and I don't know if Cole, if you have much to say on this or not, but Alex Shelley takes the loss.
Yeah, I saw that, and I wish Alex Shelley would just go to NXT. Like, I was so excited to see him on that one-off match, and I just hope that maybe he's just fulfilling some of the signed commitments that he's already had, maybe that he needs to get off of his, agenda before he can fully commit. But
yeah,
I hate seeing him take the L to people that he shouldn't be taking the L to.
And the fact that it's the opening match on the card. So, I don't know. I agree with you. It just, he might be at a spot in his career where he's just not necessarily wanting to commit to a specific organization or a specific company, but at the same time wants to keep working. I don't know. So we'll see. And then you have Vincent and Bateman against Dalton Castle and Joe Hendry. I'll admit I've not even heard of Vincent and Bateman. I don't know who they are, but they get the win apparently. And then they have Slex against Flip Gordon. For what it's worth, I love Flip Gordon. I mean, even back to whenever he was on Being the Elite. He's super funny. He's super good in the ring. He gets the win in this match. Then you have Alex Zane and Andrew Everett. Andrew Everett. That name's familiar, but I can't put the face of the name. But actually, Alex Zane gets the win. Next match, and I'm just breezing through these. Mexa Squad against the Briscoes. Mexa Squad is actually part of the current Ring of Honor 6-man tag team champions. The Briscoes get the win. Kind of makes me wonder if they're going to set up a 6-man tag title match with the Briscoes and the Mexa Squad. Briscoes obviously would have to pick out a third guy, but we'll see. Then they have the Ring of Honor Battle Royal at the end. And I thought I read somewhere that this is for the number one contendership to the Ring of Honor heavyweight title. I'm not 100% sure on that. I could just be making that up. So they have a couple of surprise entrants, I guess. Dragon Lee, or at least what appeared to be Dragon Lee, was one of them. But if you knew ahead of time that Dragon Lee was actually on the New Japan card literally just hours earlier, you would probably have a good idea that this couldn't have been Dragon Lee. Unless, I mean, he literally would have had taken a flight directly from Japan to Baltimore and worked on, very little sleep. So fast forward to the end. You've got Dragon Lee, Kenny King, Woods, and Silas at the end. Woods accidentally eliminates Silas Young. Dragon Lee eliminates Wood. Dragon Lee eliminates Kenny King, but then Dragon Lee unmasks to reveal it's actually Flip Gordon. If this was for the number one contendership for the Ring of Honor title, stupid lights, I think Flip Gordon deserves that spot.
Oh, most definitely.
I think he's gotten to the point where he has shown that. I mean, he's shown that he can be in a main event spot. I mean, he's main evented with Nick Aldis for the NWA Heavyweight title before. Granted, he didn't win, or they didn't put him over. So, I'm just gonna read a couple comments real quick. Brandon Randall says, "Do we think Shinsuke will go back to Japan or re-sign?" Well, he's already re-signed with WWE pretty recently. He's going to be with WWE at least until, let's just look real quick. Let's see what the Google machine says. I know he's recently re-signed within the last, year, maybe. I feel like it's pretty recent. So if he does go back to Japan, he's not going back for a while. So this was November 2019. Nakamura reportedly re-signed with WWE. So Dave Meltzer said that he had signed a few months back, and more than likely, if he re-signed at that point, they were really pushing the 5-year contracts. So let's just say hypothetically it was a 3-year, because I know Elias signed for a 3-year. Even if Nakamura re-signed for a 3-year, he's with WWE at least until 2022. If it's a 5-year, he's going to be with them until 2024. So he's got a while regardless. William Lorenzana says Dragon Lee, Ring of Honor Television Champion. Yeah, Dragon Lee is current Ring of Honor Television Champion, and I'm gonna verify that. But I'm pretty sure he even had the Ring of Honor Television title whenever he wrestled on the New Japan card. But I'm going to make sure that I've got my facts correct. He is a current Ring of Honor World Television Champion. He goes by Ryu Lee in New Japan. So that's kind of a quick recap of... Oh, no, I'm sorry. There's a couple more matches on this card. Just kidding. You've got Moth Martina against Sumi Sayaki. Moth Martina gets the win. Dan Maff and Jeff Cobb against Jay Lethal and John Gresham. Cobb and Maff get the win. Ray Horse and Brody King. Brody King gets the win. Then you have the match that closes the card. You've got Marty Scurll and PCO against Nick Aldis and Rush. Scurll and PCO get the win. At the end, Scurll takes a mic. He basically says he's telling Aldis he's going to accept his challenge. Basically says Skrull says basically if he wins he's an NWA champion, but if Aldis wins, Skrull's going to write him a check for $500,000. I was kind of confused because I don't know if that is playing off the if Skrull loses he's going to pay for everyone's ticket, or if that's separate. Like if he's going to pay for everyone's ticket plus give Skrull $500,000, I don't know.
It seemed like the whole promo is based more off money than it is the belt.
I know.
Nick Aldis is like, I want you to have something to lose. So you got all this big money matches and stuff that you've been doing here recently. Like,
right.
You're going to give me money. And I'm like, I'm a little confused on all that.
Yeah, I was too. And maybe it was less confusing. I didn't actually watch any of that. I was going through a recap that I looked at. I watched a couple of small videos, but I couldn't find one on that particular promo. Maybe it made more sense if you watched it. I don't know. If you watched it, let me know. Leave us a comment. Tell us if you watched it or not. Also, we're going to start talking about our topic here shortly about the best factions and stables in wrestling history. If you have a thought on what those are, let us know. We'll read your comments and thoughts on the air. Brian Mendez says this storyline is amazing. Stakes are on the line. I agree from a storyline standpoint. It seems like it's good, but I again, I'm with Cole. I'm confused about the whole money stuff. But, I mean, money was a big thing in storylines in the 80s NWA, so maybe that's the route they're going. If that is, that makes sense to me. So we'll see. Again, we're going to transition shortly to our topic about greatest wrestling stables in history. Leave us a comment on what your thoughts are on that. Before we get into that, just something real quick.
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
So I wanted to mention you can check out the Going Broadway podcast with new shows every week on Apple Podcasts and Google Play, as well as a number of other platforms where you can access your podcasting. For those of you watching us live at the moment, each show is archived, and you can go back and watch any one of them on Facebook or via our YouTube channel. As well, go to goingBroadwayPodcast.com/YouTube and check us out. You can also check us out at lineupmedia.fm. Please also download our free app. It's called Yo Radio. It can be downloaded through the App Store or Google Play. Yo Radio is the most advanced, user-driven streaming radio service on the market. Everything you would expect and more from the most full-featured platforms ever developed. Listen to an endless genre of music, podcasts, including our show via the Lineup channel, sports, news, and more 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and always 100% free. Again, that's Yo Radio, available via the App Store, Google Play, or by visiting yoradio.com. Wanted to plug our giveaways real quick. So if you've already liked our page, we thank you for liking our page. We thank you for watching and supporting us. Right now, between all of our platforms, our show is getting, between viewers and listeners, we're getting, between both shows every week, we're getting over 8,000 views and listens on average every week. So thank you so much, you guys, for your support. Thank you again for liking the page. If you have liked our page, please share our page with your friends. Once we hit 500 likes, again, we're going to do another t-shirt giveaway. Once we hit 1,000 likes, we're going to give away a free belt. I've actually posted that belt in a couple of different videos and a couple of different photos on our page, so check that out and message me if you have any questions regarding that. So let's talk about wrestling stables. So you really have to go back to not to do a history lesson. You really have to go back to when tag team wrestling started in wrestling in like the 50s and 60s. Because if you had tag teams before you had stables. So Cole, I'll give you the floor for a second. So in your mind, and I know your timeline as far as how long you've been watching wrestling is different than mine, so obviously your take on this will differ. When you think wrestling stables, who are the greatest wrestling stables of all time that you've either watched or heard about?
So, I mean, I feel like the main ones that you would think of are ones that were in prominent wrestling promotions, even though there are great stables that I will always talk about that were in independent scenes and stuff that may not have taken off like they should have. due to where they were at. I mean, you got to talk about groups like NWO,
For sure.
who just changed the game. D-Generation X, who changed the game. You know, there was the League of Nations. Yeah, I grew up on League of Nations.
For those of you that don't know, League of Nations was Alberto Del Rio, Sheamus, Cesaro, and who am I leaving out?
They put all those guys in there.
There's 4 of them.
Sheamus,
Cesaro, Alberto Del Rio. I'm leaving one of them out.
Was it Wade Barrett?
Yeah, Wade Barrett. That was
A lot of guys in there. I mean, there's been great ones. You got to shout out Bullet Club though. All right, like
absolutely,
because like they did. I mean, it was very NWO-ish of how they went about doing it, but like they took something on the independent scene and made it something special.
They made it just as big as what NWO was, in my opinion. I mean, you might disagree from the standpoint of, well, NWO was much more well-known. That's true. NWO was well known to American audiences. If
Right.
you go over to Japan, because NWO had their NWO Japan mini stable or whatever you want to call it, but that was just like, I mean, you had Masahiro Chono, you had Scott Norton, Great Muta might have been a part of it, but just as if you want to use that argument that NWO is more well known to American audiences than Bullet Club, I would actually disagree from the standpoint that I feel like Bullet Club was bigger with American audiences than NWO was with Japan audiences, if that makes sense. They pretty much did what NWO did, but reinvented it, made it cool, and granted, there are more platforms in which you can get your product across to foreign audiences, but Bullet Club took advantage of that, because I heard of Bullet Club even before I really got back into wrestling as much as I am now. I mean, that speaks to how well they were marketing themselves, how well that they were getting their brand and their product across to American audiences. Because you got to remember, Bullet Club originated in Japan. Like, you didn't hear about Bullet Club being in, Ring of Honor or on the Indies before they're in Japan. And credit to, Finn Balor, whenever he was Prince Devitt, he's the one that started it. It didn't become the popular entity that it was until, you had AJ Styles on board, Kenny Omega was on board, Young Bucks, Gallows and Anderson. So
like, when you say stable, I think beyond tag teams sometimes, because stable to me is sometimes a little bit different than a tag team.
No, I'm talking. So I'll answer your question and answer Williams at the same time. He said, "Would you say stable and faction are the same?" I'm grouping all that together. Yes, and when I think stable or faction, I'm thinking more than just a tag team. I'm thinking if you've got 3 guys or more, that counts as a stable or a faction. So, for example, Fabulous Freebirds back in the 70s and 80s, I would classify them as a stable or a faction. Brian says at this point they all weren't doing anything, so they put all of them together in League of Nations. Yeah, I wasn't really prolifically watching wrestling when they were a faction, so I'm taking Cole's word for it that they were.
I liked it. I liked the booking on it. Not the booking. I liked the idea of it.
Right. So NWO for sure, Bullet Club for sure. If you want to go back further, I mean, you could really classify the Von Erichs as a stable because, they had the Von Erichs and
Heart Foundation.
Freebirds, Heart Foundation for sure. And whenever we say Heart Foundation, we're saying more than just, this was after Bret Hart and Neidhart were a tag team. We're talking like when they brought Davey Boy Smith in and Brian Pillman and that whole gang. I'm going back to the Four Horsemen. To me, you didn't have a group of guys and I'm going to say stuff that you can go back on the network or YouTube videos or wherever you want to watch it. They're going to say the exact same thing that I'm going to say. But before the Four Horsemen, you did not have a group of guys that had the talent level in the ring, on the microphone. You didn't have a group of guys that came together like that. Before that, it was unprecedented. I mean, you had Ric Flair, he could go in the ring. You had Arn Anderson, he could go in the ring. By the way, all these guys could go in the ring and be on the microphone. These lights, I wish I could somehow take them, just flip them on and take the motion sensor garbage off of them. So if you're watching this, I apologize. So, real quick, Brandon Randall, did the Samoans have a faction? I think any Samoans were always in a tag team.
Yeah, the Wild Samoans were just two. There was only two of them.
I mean, you had Wild Samoans, you had the Samoan SWAT team, and NWA WCW. I don't think they were the same. I don't think they're the same guys. Maybe they were. If you're watching, help me out on that. I know you had like the Head Shrinkers at one point. I don't think you ever had a stable or a faction that were involved the Samoans. But anyway, back to the Four Horsemen. So the original incarnation, you had Flair, Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and you had J.J. Dillon as their manager. Again, at least in terms of the wrestlers, you had four guys that had such a high talent level in the ring. For the most part on the microphone, Ole Anderson was kind of, hit or miss on the microphone. But then eventually you had my favorite incarnation of the Horsemen. You had Flair, Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Barry Windham. And at that point, that was when the Horsemen were at their height. You could not go to an event where the Four Horsemen were on the card and not. Let's put it this way: a lot of wrestling cards today, you have crowds that are just dead, like they're not into it at all. You're guaranteed to not have that if the Horsemen were on a card in the 80s. It wasn't going to happen. People wanted to see the Horsemen get beat and beat up. They had a lot of this attributes to the storyline and the booking at the time. You had the Horsemen, attack faces like Dusty Rhodes, Magnum TA, Road Warriors, and they ran angles where they actually appeared to like legit injure Dusty Rhodes. Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express. So, in my mind, and this is just the old school fan in me talking, I don't think you're going to top the Four Horsemen ever, in my opinion. And I know people's opinions are going to be different, which is totally fine. I get it. But without the Four Horsemen, you don't have factions, period. I mean, again, you had factions before them, but they weren't at the level of talent in ring and on the microphone that the Four Horsemen were.
Oh, most definitely. And I think there's a testament to Ric Flair in that, too, because Ric Flair goes on to be a part of other prominent factions.
100% agreed.
Evolution. Evolution was absolutely phenomenal for its time. Did exactly what a faction should do. And that's to build those four guys up to eventually be single stars. The Shield. The Shield was great because it built three guys up together that then went on to be solo commodities. I even will mention Fortune on TNA. So Ric Flair was part of Fortune, which had AJ Styles, Bobby Roode, was it James Storm?
James Storm.
And Kazarian?
And Nigel McGuinness. Mm-hmm. Well, he was Desmond Wolfe, but same guy.
Either way, like look at those names at that time, and I look at them now. You know what I mean? Like he was a part of building. Ric Flair's always been a part of building up a next generation too. Mm-hmm. And I think that even when he was with the Four Horsemen, he was building other guys. It wasn't just about building Flair; it was about building other guys. And I think that's a huge testament to him. Speaking of TNA, I've always loved Main Event Mafia as well. I thought the Main Event Mafia stable was cool with Sting and Samoa Joe and Booker T and some of those guys.
I think Nash was in that, wasn't he? There are a couple of different incarnations of that.
Yeah, the original was probably my favorite.
So I'm going to correct myself. Apparently, Desmond Wolfe was not a part of Fortune. The reason, so ironically enough, and this is a lot of the reason because I didn't watch TNA at the time. I'll get to that in just a second. Brandon Randall says, "Gotta go, guys. Just want to say this is my third watch with you guys, and you're doing a great job. We'll continue to watch and be a fan." Brandon, we appreciate it. Again, we can't say enough. We appreciate the support and the viewership. And again, you can check us out later. If you can't check us out live, if you can't check out the entire show, you can check us out on our Facebook page, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you want to give us a listen or a watch. So the promo where you had Fortune in the ring with Flair, and then you had Jay Lethal doing his Black Machismo thing. Desmond Wolfe was in the ring, and so I just assumed he was part of that faction, but apparently not. So it looks like it's Flair, AJ Styles, James Storm, Bobby Roode, Kazarian, Matt Morgan at one point, Doug Williams at one point, Rob Terry at one point, and Christopher Daniels.
Yeah, the original though was AJ Styles. I want to say Christopher Daniels.
It was Styles, Kazarian, Storm, and Robert Roode were the original.
And then they brought Daniels in.
Yeah.
As well, eventually.
It basically was it tried to be another version of the Four Horsemen because you had Flair as like the manager or what was the J.J. Dillon of the group, and then you had the other four.
Oh, I mean, they literally played out that Flair came out and said, "I need to build a new one."
Yeah,
was basically the whole storyline. You also have this one gets slept on a lot. LAX has been prominent for years in the independent scene as being a very prominent stable to build with. They always have different moving pieces within that. One of my favorites growing up, they weren't like they were prominent in tag team wrestling. Too Cool. I absolutely loved Too Cool, man. Like that was one of my favorite, kind of factions or teams to watch.
I feel like they were one of the first, if not the first, comedy gimmick that got over with the fans and got over huge.
It was just different, like it was just a different team. I pulled up a list just to kind of, because sometimes you just forget. One team I feel that gets slept on a ton that was just underrated and probably could have went a lot further than what they pushed it was Legacy. With Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase. Yeah. Like, Randy Orton's a good faction leader. All right, like, that's why I was kind of bummed that they didn't put the Revival with him, because I really felt like he would have been the superstar to help get the Revival, like, where they needed to be.
Well, not to get off on a tangent, but here's how I view that. I think they were going to build towards that, but I think there are other aspects involved in terms of, this is just hearsay. I've not read anything. This is just kind of my own observation and opinion. A part of me wonders that if the Revival was going to stay, if they would have stuck having, if they would have kept Orton with the Revival and formed something. But that was also around the time that Revival expressed the fact that they were maybe not necessarily unhappy, but just, exploring their contract options. It was also around the time that Orton hadn't re-signed yet. So it could have been the fact that maybe all three of them could have been on the way out. I don't know. I've heard so many people say and read from so many other people that said, Orton was never considering leaving, that he's a WWE lifer, and I can see that. But I can also see Orton being like a Jericho type in terms of, I'm going to, roll the dice. I'm going to create a stir in the wrestling community, in the wrestling world, and keep it open to jumping to AEW. Again, whether or not he ever considered it, I don't know. I still feel like that's where the Revival is going, unless they just want to stay on the indies and, kind of like be their own boss, which, more power to them if they want to do that. So
yeah, I just feel like they missed the mark on that. Like, Legacy was so like, and honestly, that I feel like that's what got Cody Rhodes to where like he could have got off on his own. You know, like that kind of started his run. Even Ted DiBiase Jr. kind of got his run based off of the Legacy run. Don't ever forget about the Spirit Squad. Shout out Dolph Ziggler. I just saw that and I kind of laughed at it. But like, let's not forget like the factions and stables that are out there now doing it. That are like actually, because you know right now in wrestling how hard it is to have a faction that actually works. Like they've almost killed off tag teams in general, like WWE specifically, which makes it hard for other promotions to really do it because it's dead where it kind of counts right now. But they've kind of killed those off, right? So like it's really hard to get like a faction completely over, and I feel like in WWE specifically, they don't even really work on the main card at all. I feel like on Raw and SmackDown, like name a prominent faction that's working right now.
The Rollins, AOP, and Murphy is about it.
You know, the Midnight, and that's kind of just thrown together, right? Like there's not even really a name for that right now.
That's a good point. They haven't come out with a name, have they?
There's not. It's really just the Monday Night Messiah and his like lackeys. Like, there's no like real name for it. You could say Zayn and his two, that are with him. But like when you look at NXT, you have Undisputed Era who's killing it, Imperium, who's killing it, who are doing their things. When you look outside of WWE and you look at groups like the Inner Circle. You look at the Elite. You look at Villain Enterprises. You there's a lot of factions that are actually
Jurassic Express,
Best Friends,
Best Friends in Orange Cassidy.
There are just a lot. SCU.
SCU.
There are just a lot of factions that are getting slept on, in a sense, because of the fact that factions are not the same. You know, you also have to admire all the different corporate factions that have been made, like all the ones that have stemmed out of whoever's running the company.
Speaking of corporate, it just went through my head. You said corporate factions, the corporation,
right?
I didn't even think of that till just now. But William Lorenzana says the Kingdom. That's Ring of Honor's one of Ring of Honor's stables. Who's in the Kingdom? Let's look. I'm not super familiar. I know Matt Taven's in it, but that's about it. So, Matt Taven and TK O'Ryan. Is that it? I thought there was. Oh, Adam Cole had a version at one point. Okay, so Adam Cole, Michael Bennett, Matt Hardy was a mentor. So yeah, I forgot that Adam Cole was part of that before he was Bullet Club. So.
There's been a lot of like in every company. There's been a lot of those like corporate teams, you know, like where whoever's running the company builds their guys. I know when Hogan and Bischoff went to Impact, that they built like Jeff Hardy and they like built their little faction.
Immortal.
You saw the Authority with Triple H and Stephanie building their kind of team up.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's also been the establishments who come in to try to break up those things, like Nexus. Nexus came in with Wade Barrett and all those guys and try. I mean, it was actually a really cool storyline. They just went nowhere with it afterwards.
Well, they had Cena bury it when that's what killed it.
You know, they put the belt on Wade Barrett during it, and then they had all these guys who all had all this potential, right? Like all these different guys, and then like as soon as Nexus kind of broke up. All these guys went their separate ways, but none of them ever got over because it was all built around faction and not around building up those guys as single competitors.
Yeah,
and they had to repackage like Ryback and I couldn't even tell you what his name. I forget what his name was before he was Ryback, but he was on the roster as.
Oh, it'll hit me. So I know that Bray Wyatt was Husky Harris,
and then you had Michael McGillicuddy.
Yeah. I forgot about him.
So there's been great factions that I feel like they missed the mark on. Like the core, you had CM Punk Straight Edge Society. There's been good factions that were in theory when they wrote them, wow, but then like they missed the mark on putting the 2 and 2 together.
Yep.
And that's frustrating because sometimes you read these and you're like, wait, they were a team, and then you're like, oh, but what happened?
Yeah.
You know.
Brian Mendez says Chris Reeves. That might be Ryback's real name, but Skip Sheffield. Wasn't it Skip Sheffield? Wasn't that his name? I don't know.
Yes. Yes. Something Sheffield.
I thought it was Skip Sheffield.
It's probably Skip Sheffield.
Okay. I'll tell you what. I mean, we could talk about this more, but I think we're going to have to wrap this up. We're going on almost an hour and a half now, and these stupid lights.
The lights are telling us to leave.
Pretty much. For those of you watching, these lights are just on. They're on auto.
The Wyatt family. I forgot about the Wyatt family. I'm sorry.
These lights are on basically motion sensor, so I guess we don't move around enough during our show. So we'll be back here on Thursday. Excuse me. We're going to wrap it up for today. Thursday, 9 a.m., we might come up with a topic, but I know Thursdays we have a lot to recap between Raw and NXT and Dynamite. So we might come up with a smaller topic. We'll see. Also to be determined, it might just be me and Cole going forward on this show. Tio might pop in periodically, but I think just based on conversations I've had with him in private, he might be pulling away from the show, which is fine. As a lot of you know, we actually, the office in which this podcast is hosted out of, we have a number of different companies and different job titles, so to speak. So he's got some other responsibilities here. And when he's here, he'll be able to contribute because he's a big wrestling fan, just like we are. He'll have some stuff to input as well. Regardless, me and Cole will be here and until further notice every Monday and every Thursday at 9 a.m. So tune in Thursday. We're going to go through Raw. We'll go through Dynamite. We'll go through NXT. And we're also taking suggestion topics. So if you have any suggestions, let us know. We're happy to talk about what you, the listener, you, the viewer, want us to talk about. So any final thoughts? Final remarks?
Nope. Excited to see what we get to talk about this Thursday. Got a lot of wrestling coming up this week.
We always have a lot to talk about on Thursdays. So we'll see. We might just have Thursdays be a solely recap show. Who knows? Because if there's not a lot to talk about, we might need a topic. But anyway, we're going to get off here. So for Cole, for Alex, myself, we will see you on Thursday.
And so, goodbye. And good night. Bang!
This podcast was a presentation of LightUpMedia.fm.